Hello and welcome to the DreamHack Download, everything gaming under one podcast. On this episode, we're going to be hitting the new Fallout show, talking about adjustments to various esports leagues, and what we can do at DreamHack to make our shows safer. Special thanks to Blue Microphones for supporting our podcast. Like how we sound? Make sure to check them out for all your audio needs. Now let's get started.
Welcome to episode 6 of the DreamHack Download, everybody. I'm your host, Kyle Consmo, and I just got back from vacation, actually.
Yeah,
which
you
is
look
kind of
so
a weird
tan.
thing to say. I know, I
So
got
jealous.
some sun. My neck's a little red from being out on the beach. Oh, man, it was so nice. Made sure to socially distance the whole time we were out there, but that's the nice part about Washington beaches is that they're big and there's not a whole lot of people out there normally, so it was a pretty good time.
Why does
For those
TV
who
look
don't
so
know-
confused?
Well, we don't have tropical beaches, so it's not like a huge destination for everybody, but they are very nice. Like our beaches are kind of rocky, you know, the weather's not like 90 degrees all the time and sunny, but whatever, it's still awesome.
I'm just confused because people are out here saying that Kyle got a tan when he still looks like Casper the fucking friendly
No, no, no,
ghost,
no,
and no
no.
one wants to address it.
I was making fun of the fact that he didn't have a tan after being on vacation.
I have tan lines. I'm just going to have to tweet them later.
Ugh.
Hopefully they'll still be there.
That's on his OnlyFans, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on
What
over.
would his OnlyFans name even be? Would it be onlyfans.com/paleplatoon? I feel like that would be pretty
Wow.
good.
Pale
There's-
platoon, wow.
There's an amazing comic about someone being pale at the beach and someone sees them and they're like, the beacons are lit! Gondor's under attack!
I've seen
That
that
is
one.
what it
It's
looks
good.
like on every Washington beach about this time of year, especially after COVID, where everyone's been spending so much time inside. It's just pale. I mean, the planes are probably not able to fly over the beach with the reflections coming up to their eyes from the people sunbathing down there in socks and sandals. It's incredible to watch.
Oh,
But
goodness.
it was a good vacation. It really was. I was glad to get away, and you know, this year's kind of needed a getaway. It was the first time I packed a bag in months, which was kind of weird. So since DreamHack Anaheim, actually, was the last time that I packed a bag.
I'm curious,
Oh
Kyle.
my gosh, me too.
What is in your beach bag?
What is in my beach bag? Stunt kites. That was something that we did
Ooh,
for a
fun.
little while, a couple days. Yeah, I got some stunt kites
kite?
off of Amazon. It's a 2-string kite that you hold the handles and you can steer it around kind of like a parachute. It's very reminiscent of like ship sails and that kind of stuff. The way that they just
Huh.
pull on it and you can make it spin and do tricks and all that kind of stuff. So I taught my brother and girlfriend and his girlfriend how to fly stunt kites.
Our beaches are also fairly windy, so we have a lot of kite enthusiasts.
Yes, they are.
So-
One of the other things that I got to do while I was on vacation actually was check out a little bit of our DreamHack Originals content.
Mhm.
And can I say that Jaburnham fellow is just hilarious.
We can say whatever we want about this Jaburnham fellow. He's not going to listen to this.
That's
never,
accurate. He
never.
really won't. He
But
was even
those
on
shows
it and doesn't listen
Yep.
to it.
Right? Those shows are actually pretty good. I'm really excited and proud of our team for producing some of this content. And I know that our bonus round game show is really turning out awesome. That's something new and totally off the wall for us in comparison to what we normally do. And the team supporting that has just been doing great. So I've been really enjoying checking out some of that content. Have you guys watched any of it yet?
Yeah, so I tuned into the DreamHack Plays last week. That was, what was it? It was Remnant of the something. And it was basically a Dark Souls type game, but turned into a shooter where it was impossible. And it was Aaron and Steve, two guys, you know, work at DreamHack. They were very funny and making fun of each other nonstop and just died. Like constantly just died, as one would expect from a game compared to Dark Souls. I was very entertained.
Yeah,
They're
it's
suffering.
Remnant from the Ashes is the name of the game.
Got
It's a
it.
very cool game.
It looked real. I got a key. I won a giveaway in the chat for a key.
Nice.
I call
Nice.
it shenanigans and collusion.
I don't know what
Where's
you're
my
possibly
key?
talking. Well, you should have entered to win a key.
They told me not to enter to win a key. I guess you just didn't get that message
Well,
or whatever.
I'm not
Well-
technically staff, so
That's right. That's
I
right.
get my key.
As full-time employees, we should not be entering our own giveaways.
I wanted to enter the TFT tournament this weekend that we're hosting, but no.
Yeah, I can't do that.
either.
Yeah.
I'm playing
Man, it's
the crap
pretty
out of that.
simple. Just discard your salary and benefits during this global pandemic,
Mhm.
and then you could enter the tournament. It
I
seems
could
like a
make fat
wise
stacks.
Smart.
smart
Esports
choice.
career in TFT, here I come. My gold 4 is really going to bring me to the top of the top. Here we come.
And thus began the end of Justin's financial advising career.
I give good
Um,
financial advice. Okay, I Let the record show that I am a homeowner before the age of 30.
That is impressive.
Congratulations, sir.
It's well
Congrats.
done.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, it is Texas, but land's worth like what, a quarter down there?
It's nice.
Did you plant
It's
a
nice.
flag?
I did realize something though. The same people that are willing to pay like $1 million for a crappy 1-bedroom apartment are the same folks who think In-N-Out fries are good. So I don't know. Talk crap about Texas's land value all you want. I just don't care. I don't care. We're doing all right.
I'm glad for you. I'm glad that you got a place you can call your own, JV. A little corner of Texas.
Yeah, a dual income, no kid life is pretty good.
That millennial standard.
You're breaking things for the rest of us. How are we supposed to live up to that?
I don't know. This is a weird start to the podcast. This is a weird.
Yeah, I don't really know how we got here. This is Kyle, steer the boat back for us.
It was my vacation, I think, that derailed
that's
everything, which
true.
it was a good derailing. I did do some swimming, which it sounds like more people may have done some swimming too over the past couple weeks.
I don't want to talk about that. I'm so mad. Okay, no. Okay, background.
You don't want to talk about swimming?
Background.
Are you afraid of pools or what's going on?
What Kyle is getting at here is that Animal Crossing had an update where you get to go swimming, right? Now, because of the COVID situation, all of the pools are closed. Like all the pools are, so I can't go swimming.
Okay.
And so not only does Animal Crossing have a swimming update to taunt me about the fact that I cannot go swimming, which is one of my favorite activities in the world. I live in the pool in the summer. Then someone else is playing Witcher as we're talking about this, and I see him and he's swimming in Witcher, and I'm still mad. It was the absolute worst timing ever. And I was like, I hate you, video games. You were all conspiring against me.
Don't play Sea of Thieves because you end up swimming in that game more than you end up on a boat.
Yeah.
They're just going to get irrationally angry.
I know you can't swim in Dota, but like every game lets you swim pretty much.
I sink in Dota. That's possible.
That's true. He's very good at that. At least you didn't check your emails while playing.
Never.
You know, I just had an interesting realization.
Chris did that.
A really interesting realization, actually. This Animal Crossing update was the first time anyone's ever been excited about a water level.
Do people not like water levels in Ocarina of Time? I thought the water temple was cool.
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about the water temple?
Water's a scary place. Okay?
We don't talk about the water temple.
Why don't we talk about the water temple?
We don't talk about it.
I mean, I was like 8 the last time I saw it, so I don't remember it.
Look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what water it is. It's just bad, right? It's just you want to avoid water at all costs.
Wait,
but
the water is so good. Nonsense?
The game would be 99% water and 1% land. But the fact that it's the other way around tells you everything you need to know about a water level. In fact, the only way they redeem the fact that there is a water level is because it always has the most banger music. I'm talking Dire Dogs, y'all. Ooh, instant classic, okay?
Are we still on Zelda?
With all these games, the water's getting cooler looking too. Back in Zelda, the water was like choppy, and you were underwater. It was an effect that you had over your screen essentially, but it wasn't like really watery. And at the end of the day, but there are some games like Resident Evil where you get near the water and it's like, holy smokes, this is terrifying. I don't want to stand near this at all because I don't know what's going to come out of here.
Or like
Death thing can come get me.
Death Stranding. The way they handle water and the weird gravity stuff in that, terrifying.
Yeah, the rain,
super cool.
How it hurts, essentially. It makes you age. Yeah, like, super cool mechanic in that game.
Like Disney's Hercules? It does that? Like Disney's Hercules?
Yeah, it does.
Right back to the Disney tie-ins every time.
Yep, JV's always a good partner for Disney tie-ins. I appreciate you. But one of the things that we were going to talk about a little bit was like The Witcher 3 is getting a 4K mod, and 4K mods push the water detail kind of to the edge.
Well, I've seen it. So I didn't know this existed, and I've been recommending Witcher, and I haven't even played it myself yet. And then they got a new PC and they downloaded the 4K mod. And so I got to like sit there and see the before and the after. And it's absolutely crazy what that game can do and like what modders did. And then when you realize that Cyberpunk is made by the same people and that The Witcher still pushes your computer to like maximum capacity and still looks beautiful and is this amazing game so many years later, and that, their CD Projekt Red has another game eventually coming out. That's crazy to me. Like, I haven't really felt that excited by a studio in a while. I feel like studios, there hasn't been like a brand new breakout game in a long time. You know, like Mass Effect and BioShock and Borderlands and all of those, like, they're all series now. They've been around for a while. This is seeing what they did with The Witcher and thinking about what they're going to do with Cyberpunk. That just fascinates me.
I do believe Cyberpunk will end up being the next gold standard for killing a PC. Like, what game will push your PC to the limit? Like Crysis did, right?
Yeah.
Crysis was that gold standard of like, I have a Crysis-ready PC. Like, holy shit, really? That's pretty cool. Because if you could play that game at 60 frames, you were rocking a hardcore machine back in the day. And that's kind of where they're getting upset about the new Crysis remake that's coming out. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it's not looking as good as the original did, which is kind of funny. So we'll see how that turns out. But really, the new gold standard will become Cyberpunk. And to see, like you said, the community modders versus a full-fledged studio push the game to 4K, you're going to see some detail differences.
Ooh.
Just beautiful ray traced 4K in every way. I cannot wait. The monitor upgrade will be happening before that game comes out for me. That's my birthday present to myself this year, is a beautiful 4K gaming monitor. So
yeah, that's what I'm eyeballing too.
And I am curious, does like the console version of these games come with like console life support or something just to give the extra juice it needs to be able to run the damn thing?
Hey,
You
the
know, like,
new consoles, we had a whole discussion about how beautiful they're supposed to look.
yeah, but when they're talking about like an Xbox One Cyberpunk 2077 edition, I'm just thinking, how?
Yep.
How is it even
It's because the older ones are going to run at 30 FPS.
Yeah.
And when you're frame locked to 30 FPS, you can allow the hardware to have the additional resources to actually render that number of frames. Whereas like on PC, you know, we're talking about rendering, you know, Cyberpunk at 144 hertz, right? That's completely different.
Well, and you might even actually render it higher and downscale depending on your PC. And there's so many options for how beautiful that game can be. But this is just another, like, if you look at the timing, how much you want to bet that a big game like this is intentionally console releases are planned around major titles like this. So if Cyberpunk comes out this fall, holiday season, looking beautiful, and Xbox and PlayStation have released shortly beforehand, I bet there's a lot of people who maybe wouldn't have bought that console who buy it so that they can play this at that level. I think that it's going to be a huge push.
Bundle.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a huge push for console sales. We were talking about how these consoles were too expensive and they weren't necessarily going to do that much on previous episodes. And you combo it with a game like that, and that's a whole different marketing strategy for getting people to buy your hardware.
Is it going to cost $70 on the new console versus 60 on the old one, or is it going to be 70 on both?
Wait, is that a thing now?
Yeah, consoles are pushing towards $70 titles now.
I guess it makes sense to a degree. I was talking with an indie developer about this, right? That it's weird to think that whenever I was a real youngin', a loaf of bread would cost like $1. Now, where I live in good old Texas, it's closer to like $2. But the price of games has always been $60 stateside, anyways.
Yeah. So
Not quite. So there's a couple of pieces here. $60 has been kind of the gold standard for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Basically since like Xbox, the original Xbox era. But if you go back and you look at even all the way back to Atari, NES, that kind of stuff, if you look at the price of those games and you actually calculate for inflation today, those games would be around $120, $150.
Yeah.
So the actual rate of inflation on game pricing has not actually kept up with economic inflation.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
We've been stuck at this $60 thing forever. But the problem and the reason why we're pushing to this $70 thing is because the price of developing these games has gone up exponentially compared to back then.
Well,
right?
and
so we actually need this $70 price to be able to support the publishers and developers.
Well, no, I agree completely, and I'm here for it. I think the counterpoint that the indie dev that I was talking to made was, even if the price of games has remained relatively the same with that $60 price tag that it was, say, 20 years ago, the amount of people you're reaching with this game is so much more than in the past.
So one of
That's true.
Interesting way to look at it.
One of the other things that's changed is The $60 price used to represent that, so you as a video game company made your game, but then you had to go through a physical distributor. So you had to have physical copies made, you had to go through that distribution, then you had to get it into stores. And so you lost a lot of profit. And so the number I've seen tossed around is something like the developer used to see about 30%. Then that's why what Valve did was so crazy, because they came in and they said, listen, we'll take 12%. But it's a digital platform, or maybe they took 30% and 12% was the Epic Store more recently. I think Valve came in and said they'd take 30% and the game developer got 70, which was a huge increase in the profit margin. So they didn't actually have to increase the price of the game because they were increasing their profit margin by moving to digital platforms. And now you see the Epic Store coming in, and maybe that's where the 12% is from. This all happened like a year or two ago, so I'm a little fuzzy on the numbers. But basically they were like, okay, we'll only take 12%. And now Epic has said, hey, we're not taking any money from you until your game has made like over $1 million or something along those lines.
Unreal Engine 5,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
So you see these profit margins increasing for developers, which is one of the reasons that game prices haven't had to increase, because they're finding ways to make more money by cutting out middlemen and going to online marketplaces. And now there's this actual competition for Valve. They have to actually start thinking about how they handle Steam. And that's going to be very interesting to watch.
Little tidbit of information before we move on from this. The most expensive Genesis cartridge ever made was $100 back in 1992. And it was because they actually include hardware on there. It's a Virtua Racer. Virtua Racing, and it's the actual chips that they put on the cartridges were so physically expensive to produce, and the game was dependent on it, that they had to raise the price to $100.
See, I remember, like, if we're talking about a game that came with hardware, Donkey Kong 64 came with that yellow memory pack, remember?
That's essentially the same
like
thing that they would do. They stopped putting them in the actual cartridges around that time. That's when they started to phase away from it. There are still some like Mario RPG that are real-time clock in there and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, they were trying to transition it all onto the console itself. So the games could just play anything. So that expansion slot, which the GameCube actually had expansion slots too, very similar to the N64. You put that expansion in there and it makes your console more powerful, adds more RAM to it. You don't see that anymore because your computer just gets upgraded. Your console is already built and spec'd out for that, and you have to go buy a brand new one if you wanted the 4K model of the Xbox nowadays. So,
well, we're actually kind of going back to that with the new generation of Xbox. There is an expansion module for it that they're going to be releasing. I think it's basically some form of solid state memory that will allow it to just do more faster. I don't remember the specifics, but it's funny that we're kind of almost going backwards with that, but it's actually just revolutionary new technology.
Makes the entry point lower.
Yeah.
How are y'all feeling about, I know if I was GameStop, I would be furious, but how are y'all feeling about like the PS5 digital edition and concepts like that, for instance? Because it seems like whenever I was a kid, a big part of the gaming process was, oh, I have this game. My friend has this other game. We can maybe trade games for a week. And it feels like that's going away with these moves, but also the culture has shifted so much that maybe that's not even a thing people really do as much anymore. I mean, what are y'all's thoughts on that?
I don't think it's a thing that people do anymore. I think they just buy the games. Because if you think about it, gaming is way more normalized. So it's a lot easier to get a parent to buy a game. You don't really have to have like middle school back alley game trades anymore. Like you kind of just own it. And then on top of that, having a PC is way more common. Multiplayer online games that are free to play are way more common. We've seen with the prevalence of Fortnite and everything. So it super feels like a culture shift. I still buy physical Switch games because I want to be able to hand them to someone else and be like, okay, you play this now. And there's a part of it to me that I've never owned my own console. It was always my brothers that bought the consoles. And the only game that I bought was Soul Calibur. And I was so freaking proud of having the Soul Calibur case. Like I loved it. So now that I have my own, like my own Switch, I wanted, even though the physical games are more expensive, and that makes sense, I want them because I want that physical case, even if it's harder to travel with. But I think that's a relic. I don't think that's what exists now.
I think it is a dying breed for sure. And I don't condone the account sharing piece, but if I were a younger kid that didn't have access to games and my friend did, I may ask for his account so I could log in and play it.
Yeah.
That just seems like a more natural way to share games nowadays than it is to swap a cartridge or swap a disc.
Yep.
That's a good point. Now I'm
I haven't
curious,
used
though.
physical media in about 10 years, so I don't care.
Yeah, thank you, Amazon, for that.
Hey, I
Speaking of
still use
Amazon,
CDs.
actually,
Yeah.
Yes.
there's something pretty cool other than CDs that you can get on Amazon that may be coming down the line that's really related to something that I'm really excited about. Fallout,
I'm super
show.
stoked for this.
Ooh.
like
Fallout
like a
TV
real
show.
Fallout TV show made by
Mhm.
Amazon, which I really like Amazon Prime's content. I'm a huge Expanse fan. That's a really good space drama on there. And the potential for them to run with the Fallout lore and give it the story some justice, kind of like we saw with Netflix and The Witcher, could be really freaking cool.
So I have an
So what I'm
important
particular-
question. Oh, okay, continue.
Okay. No, you go first.
Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors for
I
it.
have-
Rock, paper,
it's-
scissors for it. Do it right now. I'm calling it. I'm
This
not
is a
even joking.
podcast,
RPS.
Justin. We have people
I
listening
will do
audio
the
only.
play-by-play commentary for this rock, paper, scissors match that's about to happen so y'all can talk. Okay, ready?
I don't
3,
think Blaine's
2,
gonna do
1,
it. I don't
go.
think Blaine is. Nope.
Nope.
Yeah, no.
Nope.
All right.
Nope.
Well, we're cutting off JV.
Wow.
I have an important
That was-
question.
Kyle was ready. Kyle was ready.
Okay, I have an important question though. So Fallout, unlike The Witcher, doesn't have Geralt. It doesn't have that central character that you can follow. So, would you prefer that the show be kind of like Black Mirror, where it's like a different vault every episode, a bunch of different storylines? Or do they pick someone and semi-manufacture a main character story to follow?
You mean like
Hmm.
design their own Fallout character
Hmm.
essentially and then go through the game or the story with that person?
Something like that, or like picking an existing character and just amping up their storyline so that they become a main character.
Well, okay. So as a huge Fallout fan, and maybe one of the people, probably the person who's put the most in the Fallout games on this podcast, I would have to say there's two ways they could go. One, you either create like, a new character and a new storyline and then just simply involve stuff from the rest of them, which I think would be cool because there's so much to explore in the Fallout universe, and there's a lot of it that has not been explored before, and it's just bits and tidbits and pieces in the lore. So there's just so much for them to work with that it's absolutely insane. Now, because Fallout's a game where you make your own story, I think that would be super cool, is to have, brand new character, brand new storyline, and then you just tie in all the pieces that we have from all the different Fallout games throughout history. However, if you do decide to pick somebody from the game already as a main character, I think that could work potentially if you say maybe they focus on somebody who's in the Brotherhood of Steel, or you do an
Yes.
episodic thing where it's like, okay, this 2 or 3 episodes going to be about BOS, Brotherhood of Steel. This next one's going to be about the Enclave. This next one's going to be about this vault or that vault. And there's so many vaults with weird, crazy storylines that have only been hinted at. So that could be pretty exciting too. But I think what's really going to happen and what's going to be most compelling for Fallout fans is that we get a new lone wanderer, which is the character, the player character, right? We get a new lone wanderer from a new vault in a new area that hasn't been explored yet. And we start tying in all the cool stuff from Fallout and make something new.
Because what
I
are the
think
locations we have
that's
now?
just going to be successful.
Because we have Baltimore,
Uh,
DC, Virginia in general with 76, right? And then
California, Nevada.
California, and Vegas.
Yeah.
But like, if there
Frankly,
was an-
I would love to see one set in the Pacific Northwest. honestly.
Would that just be beautiful Fallout?
A little bit biased, but I think there's a lot of really cool opportunity for using like Oregon, Washington, even Eastern Washington, Idaho as settings. Oh, we've explored Alaska too. Forgot about that one.
That could be interesting as well. The wilds of Fallout.
Yeah. Well, we specifically explored Alaska in one of the Fallout 3 DLCs. Broken Steel, I believe, is what it was called, which was super cool. But it was like a base on one of the Alaskan islands, so there wasn't a whole lot to do except for go in that base and do the thing. But really, whatever happens, I'm absolutely excited. And this is the point that I was going to bring up earlier, is that it is being made by the folks who have done Westworld.
Yes, yes.
Which is great news.
Yeah.
Westworld is incredible.
Oh,
So
God.
if they can take this, like, you know, they took the Westworld IP and they made something absolutely beautiful out of it. Now we get to take something as rich and original and awesome as Fallout and give it to the same people. And then Amazon's throwing the money behind it.
Mhm.
We have Todd Howard as an executive producer as well, by the way, and somebody from Bethesda whose name I'm forgetting. But the fact that we have people who are so close to the source material
Actually
being involved,
Yeah, that's
oh
huge.
my gosh, like
Yeah.
it's gonna be good. Like there's just no way that this can fail.
So
I can't stress enough just how huge it is that Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy are behind this show.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
say what you will about this most recent season of Westworld, even if it was the worst season of Westworld, it's still among, if not the best show on television. Like,
Yeah.
even at its lowest point, it is still that good. And one thing that's been consistent throughout, despite maybe the season's differing quality overall, is the world building aspect itself. When you watch a show like Westworld, a show that has that Lisa Joy, Jonathan Nolan touch to it, it is ridiculously, ludicrously immersive, and it sucks you in almost immediately. And
With those,
the fact that they're going to have access to this world, it might be enough to get me to start playing Fallout. Blaine, I don't know if you're going to hate me for this, but I've never played Fallout in my life, man. I don't even know where to start.
Wait, JV is all about
man.
telling us the games he hasn't played.
Right.
It's another JV confessional, y'all.
Yeah.
with the production team behind this, I trust more and more that they could tell a vault story that I would appreciate. There's not
Yeah.
many people that I think could take the Lone Wanderer story and tell it in a way that would be compelling for most audiences, because it's pretty slow. You think about playing Fallout, how much time do you spend walking across the nothing? A lot.
Right.
A lot
Well,
of
and
time.
that's where you can use plot devices to work on that. And I mean, in Fallout, shoot, I'm gonna be blasted on the internet for this one, but I think it was Fallout 2, if I remember correctly. You do get a car that you can use that expedites your travel across the wasteland.
And I think that there's ways that telling a story of bringing in the Brotherhood, because they are a big part of the show, but the Brotherhood also have the mobilization to take you places around the Fallout universe as well. So you kind of have to follow someone from that show, or from that side of it, I think, just to get the different experiences that you're going to be looking for. But I think the first season could tell a story from learning about the Brotherhood of Steel and going into the outside world, but also watching someone that's just tucked away in a vault that has no idea what's going on, and show these paralleling, almost Star Wars-esque stories at the same time that are completely contained and culminate into one point where they open the vault and the Brotherhood of Steel is there, and you're like, holy shit, the characters meet moment. That's what I want to see out of the show, is something like that, because it is two dramatic worlds that are so different from one another, that one's protected and sheltered and the other one is out fighting the crazies that are out in the Fallout world. So being able to see bits and pieces of that before they totally remove everybody from a vault scenario would be awesome.
Well, that's what made The Witcher really cool too. Hard to follow.
Yeah.
For anyone who hasn't seen The Witcher yet, they have a lot of time jumps that they don't tell you are happening. But by the end of the first season, everybody is at approximately the same time. And it's really cool to actually watch through the whole series and kind of see, because one, so the storyline used in the Witcher TV show is different from what's in the game, because it's based on the collection of short stories that was essentially the first book in the series. And it's very cool because if you played through all the games and you know all of that, this is kind of telling a bunch of origin stories. And it shows everybody in their own separate origin story and this really rich backstory of very different experiences in the same world. And then they all kind of meet up. And so now we're all waiting for season 2 to see what happens when they all meet up. But Fallout sounds like it has a very similar potential to tell a new story and really like connect the video game universe with either a richer backstory or a follow-up, depending on where they want to take it. It's going to be very exciting.
Have any of you watched the fan-made Fallout series on YouTube?
Yes.
What?
Yes, I have watched Nuka
What?
Break, and it is very good. You should absolutely go watch it. It's fantastic. It's very entertaining. Even for people who are not Fallout fans, it's still
It's a good
highly
show.
entertaining.
It
Yeah,
reminds
it's
me a
super good.
lot of Firefly It's got that same like southern or
Oh.
western feel to it, and I
Space
think they could
Cowboys.
add a bit of that western feel to some of the Fallout in the future, and just tickle that Firefly itch for so many people that are fans of that series that it doesn't get tickled very often.
Yeah, say no more.
Yeah.
That's one of
I
my
was gonna
favorite
say
shows
that-
of all time.
that
So I might need
sounds-
to.
I'm
hit that
rewatching it right now, so that's very appealing to me.
Yeah, even just the music and
Yeah.
the twangs of the banjos and things of the guitars, it's just like perfect how they tie it all in there.
Yep. They also put in a lot of great little quips that reference the games and stuff like that. So there's something in there for Fallout fans and even for people who are not Fallout fans on Nuka Break. So
Just hearing some of
gets
the
my
sounds
endorsement.
from the games in that
Yeah.
show, like you're just like, ooh, I know that noise. I know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
It feels
I
like we've
love
been
it.
getting, like pretty good video game to television adaptations. I recently saw Castlevania all the way through on Netflix. I don't know.
Oh
if
my
any of y'all
gosh,
seen
it's so
that.
good.
That's a good one.
It's so good. I mean, I'm a big anime guy to begin with, so that was an easy sell for me, but I love Castlevania and what they've done with that and exploring the Castlevania lore. And it's so good. The characters are great. The voice acting is fantastic. The animation is God tier.
Ooh,
It's so good.
It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
it's such a different world now because I grew up watching the Mortal Kombat movies. Now, I love the Mortal Kombat movies. I love them to death. But I am
Yeah, they're fantastic. They're just
very
cheesy as hell.
aware of what they are. And it's such a different approach because we look at everybody stuck at home right now. Esports are one of the only things that exist for entertainment. And you know, all of these studios and everything were already turning to video games. We saw the Warcraft movie several years ago. All of the comics have now been completely used for every single medium possible between TV shows and movies and everything. And it feels like video games is kind of the next thing that makes sense with Castlevania and with The Witcher and with this Fallout series. And we're just seeing a lot more content catering to gamers because that's kind of the new dominant spending generation that's coming at them.
All right, I have a question.
Yes.
If you could have one game made into a TV show, what would it be?
I already
Easy
have-
answer, Super Metroid.
Nice.
Give me a Metroid series.
Nice. We'll go with Renessa because JV's chomping at the bit on this one.
Oh, see, I would have the other way. Like I have a movie I really want turned into a video game.
Okay.
So
What
I'm
is it?
flipping it.
What you got?
I really want How to Train Your Dragon to be a video game. To fly around and capture new dragons and fight dragon hunters, and it just imagining the exploration and what you could do with that, it would be so cool. It would look so good. It would be so much fun, and you get to fly around. And if they made it in VR, I would be the happiest person ever. Ah, that'd be great.
Or Spyro just existing, and Vanessa's like, "You're not good enough."
Yeah,
No, I want How to
cute
Train
little
Your
It's a different
Dragon.
kind of game.
Yeah, I want How to Train Your Dragon. It's so funny and cute, and the TV show's not very good, so I need it turned into a video game.
JV.
Mine's already happening, y'all. Mine's
Is
already
it?
happening. Mine's already happening. We talked about Amazon with Fallout. We talked about Netflix with Castlevania. HBO hitting us up, blessing us with a Last of Us television series.
No
Ah.
way. Did I miss this news?
Yeah.
Here for it.
Oh,
When did
he's
this come out?
been sitting on this. He's been so excited to talk about this.
Oh my god, I've been just sitting on this, just letting it burrow, just burrowing it. Oh my god, I'm ready. Not only is Last of Us one of my favorite games of all time and I think one of the best narrative driven games ever, I think the fact that they're doing this with the creators of the game involved and also the guy who made Chernobyl, which is one of the best
Dang.
standalone series on HBO, the fact that they're all collaborating together, oh man, AZ5 me the hell up, bro. I am there. 10,000% there. With every fiber of my entire being, I am there. Oh, I can't wait, man. I can't wait. That's going to be so unbelievably good. You talk about people like Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan, they're exceptional at their craft. And I believe it's Craig Mazin if I remember correctly, who is the head writer for Chernobyl, who's going to be behind The Last of Us, along with Neil Druckmann. There's no way this can be bad. There's no way, especially when you're talking
Famous
about
last words.
Yep.
Don't curse it like that, JV. Do you want to like the show? That was great and terrible.
You know what? Look. Here. If it's a total piece of crap, then we have this as a little time capsule of me, how excited I am, right? And then immediately afterwards, we can put up a scathing review on how horrible this show is. If it turns out bad, right? In my opinion, I feel like it's going to turn out exceptionally well. All right. It's definitely not going to go the Last Airbender route of absolutely destroying all of my feelings and making me ashamed, to be honest.
That's the movie.
In regards to how bad an adaptation can get.
You're talking about the movie, not the TV show.
Absolutely.
Let's make that clear.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm just making that clear.
I said The Last Airbender.
Oh, is
not Avatar, The Last Airbender.
Got it. Sorry.
If you know, you know.
All right.
Lane and I know one of the best shows of all time, but also one of the worst films ever made, let alone the worst adaptation of anything ever. Like that is a prime example of taking perfect source material and somehow getting every single facet wrong, with one exception: the soundtrack. The Last Airbender, despite being one of the worst films I've ever seen in my entire life, has one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard in a movie. And I feel so bad that James Newton Howard, who composed this, maybe even as his magnum opus, has to have it forever linked with just this piece of just putrid, awful, vile garbage that just needs to be launched into outer space and purged from the annals of history.
Is that who did the WALL-E music?
I don't know who composed the WALL-E music.
Oh, no,
actually.
I'm thinking of Howard Shore did a bunch of music scores. I don't know if it was WALL-E or not, but I heard Howard in there, and I was like, is that who it is?
You might be thinking of, for WALL-E, it might be Michael I can't say his last name. It's like Giancino or something.
Your composer knowledge is impressive.
Thomas Newman is the WALL-E composer.
Randy Newman relation?
But the WALL-E soundtrack is one of my favorites of all time. I think that one is truly incredible.
Speaking of good soundtracks, it rounds out my answer.
Yeah?
I want Microsoft to follow through on what they've said over a decade ago and give me something that's Halo related as a TV show or a movie. There's a script that I know exists somewhere that money was exchanged for, and they have not done anything with it. They've even taunted me with Spielberg being attached to it. And I'm like, give me Halo now.
Okay.
It's just kind of like all of July for me, but
Kyle, I'm gonna put you in vacation mode one more time in a world where you have no worries and infinite resources, and you could put together the dream team to handle this Halo adaptation. Who you got? Who you got directing? Who you got writing? Who you got starring?
Man, you're gonna be really disappointed in my Hollywood knowledge here. So let's roll down this way. So there was one of the directors for The Mandalorian that did towards the end of the series, some of the episodes specifically. I forget his name, but he was also very involved with a lot of the Star Wars animated series building up to that point. He's kind of like a Star Wars guru. I think he's got the chops to really like push this through production-wise as a director. I don't care who plays John, because honestly, you shouldn't see his face. It could be really anybody that has that same voice. That would be all I need. As long as there's a Spartan walking around in that suit, that's going to make me happy. I don't know who wrote the original script, but the books, the Halo the Flood is actually my favorite book of the franchise, and
that's the one that I have read, and it is very good.
It's very good. I would love to see someone come in with those kinds of writing chops and be able to write a script for that kind of a film. So I don't know their names, sadly enough, so if we want to go back through and fact check some of these things, but I think I've described the people enough that I could have a team that I could build off of this with some resources. If Microsoft wants to sponsor me, I'm ready to go.
You can be the consultant. Chops.
Yeah, come bring me in. I got some friends I'll bring too. Some friends from the esports world that know a thing or two about the Halos.
Oh goodness!
Okay, as long as it's not directed by M. Night Shyamalan, I think we're probably okay.
No, I'm not looking for that kind of a Halo experience. I mean, the Flood would be really cool to see in a dark way like that, but no, I'm looking for more of the sci-fi action flick with a little bit of a twist here at the end when Cortana does something crazy.
Speaking of fact checking, to segue off of your last two sentences there, Kyle, I do want to correct myself. The Fallout 3 expansion in Alaska is called Operation Anchorage, and Broken Steel is a different one. And also, JV, since you have not played Fallout, I do want to highlight the Steam Summer Sale. The Fallout games are currently between 60 and 70% off, including Fallout 3 Game of the Year Edition, which has all the DLC, Fallout 4, etc. So,
and in other news, Gabe Newell is having Blaine over for dinner later.
Hey, I'd love it. Love it. Well, see, I collect knives, he collects knives, and we got to have a lot to talk about. So,
but which one? Again, Blaine, which one do I start with? Like, if you had to bet me playing all of the Fallout series on just one game.
New Vegas, honestly. I'd say out of all the the more modern Fallout games, I'd say New Vegas is probably the strongest. Just because it's the storyline is in Fallout 3 and 4, you're basically not Fallout 4. In Fallout 3, you're the lone wanderer type, typical archetype from the previous games. New Vegas takes it a very different direction, and I will not say anything about the intro because it is awesome. So no spoilers, but New Vegas is from a player experience and storyline, I think it's probably the best. Fallout 4's main storyline was a little bit weaker. It's still very good and compelling, and there's lots of cool stuff. So honestly, I recommend all of them, but to start, do New Vegas.
Okay. I literally beat Metal Gear Solid 5 yesterday.
Nice.
So I will take you up on that.
So after that, are we going to get JV to play an esport? Like, because that was his dirty little secret last time, that he doesn't really play any of the esports outside of FGC. Outside of Smash.
It's not that. It's that I don't play any MOBAs. There's plenty of esports that I play.
Okay,
it's
fair.
Just not a MOBA.
I'll allow it. It's fine. Just go play your Fallout. It's cool. Whatever.
Oh, yeah.
When Pokemon comes out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we'll wait. Yeah, when Pokemon comes out, we're 100%. We're making a team.
It's gonna be rough. I'm just gonna be such an idiot, just not knowing what the hell's going on, just being like, well,
we're used to that.
I thought that a Togepi would be pretty cute.
Wow.
Togepi could potentially be very strong. If you watch the shows at all, Togepi is actually scary sometimes.
So Blaine's prepared for this MOBA. So what you're saying is DreamHack's gonna organize a tournament, you're all gonna quit so that you can compete and become esports stars at the new Pokemon MOBA. That's the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Watch out,
Pro
world.
Charizard jungle main.
No, I'm not playing with you.
What would Togepi's ability even be in this? Like, because she just does metronome in this show.
Exactly. That's the thing. Togepi's metronome is insanely strong.
Is Togepi an ADC?
Mode. No, it's got to be support.
No, Togepi would be support. Easy. Speaking of esports stuff, speaking of esports stuff, we both tried to segue at the same time there on pace.
By the way,
you've had some choice segues, my man. Just want to say
they just went out of business completely. They finally shut down.
Oh, really?
Because Kyle took over their job.
Yeah.
Falling off segues. Esports adjustments in the industry.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had a few of the big leagues make some adjustments to how they're operating, which is pretty cool. The one in particular that I'm excited for, because I really like Rocket League, is they are totally shaking up their entire format.
Crazy
which
what
is
they're doing.
Wild.
Yeah,
it's great. Like, for me, the highlight of it was breaking it up into the multiple regions with tournaments leading into it, so it allows for a more seasonal kind of approach to where you're going to have these tournament series, and then there's going to be a big finale, and then it moves into the next season and the next season. So it really helps perpetuate Rocket League as an esports as a whole, I think. And then it's also going to allow new teams to get involved because they're also I don't remember what the term was, even though I just read the article like an hour ago. But essentially, the teams are not going to be always guaranteed to qualify.
Yeah,
so they're almost kind of getting rid of this grandfathering thing.
It used to be a lot more like a franchised league where you had an RCS, an RLCS, something. I don't remember all the letters. But you basically had the main league, and then you had the runner-up league, and there were relegation matches at the end that like a couple of teams would get moved down and another couple would get moved up from the challengers. And now instead, it's a lot more like Fortnite, where you sort of compete and earn points, or actually kind of like Dota 2, where you compete and you earn points, and that gets you there. The coolest thing for this that I really like, so Beyond the Summit started out as a Dota organizer, doing these like very community-oriented Dota events, like still Dota pros, but very oriented towards the community. And they've since branched out, and they do Smash, and they do CSGO, and they did one Rocket League event years ago. But then Psyonix changed everything and had the official league. And that made it much more challenging to run tournaments necessarily. And so for someone like BTS, they kind of stepped away from Rocket League. And I don't know if this was because of Psyonix changing things or because they chose to. But either way, they have another Rocket League tournament coming up, which is super awesome for the community because BTS is really good about directly engaging with players in ways that the community doesn't always get to see. So BTS is really about showcasing players. And I think player storylines are very underserved in esports.
Very much so.
Yeah. So I really like this Rocket League approach because it lets more community stuff happen. And like something like BTS being involved again, it's going to super serve those storylines, build up the players. And I think, you know, increase the fandom, make people even more invested in the game. And I think there's a lot more opportunities with the way they've changed the leagues around now.
Very much so. I personally feel that franchise models are just I just don't think they're good for esports. You know, esports was built off of being a very open and community driven and oriented thing, right? So taking it backwards, to me it's backwards to try to take a traditional sports model and force it into esports, because it's on the internet. It's just not how it works. Regional franchising is not good for esports.
It's I've heard it described as being bought. Like Call of Duty League has a lot of big things, and Overwatch League has a lot of big things that they're trying to figure out how to continue a season right now, where they've been pushing for this local events, these in-person events, more and more, making that homestand thing a big part of the Overwatch League community and the Call of Duty League community. But when you have to make the decision to force all of your events to online because there's just safety precautions, which in my opinion, boil down to how much money is willing to be spent on these productions, because we have examples of traditional sports doing great things to keep their players safe. But in esports, we know that the money is just not the same as traditional sports. So they have to make those concessions right now and keep the players safe, and if nothing else, save face for themselves in order to continue building that localized brand. But it is totally forced and purchased on top of whatever the esports energy was.
Well, and it's we talk about safety and the money it takes. And if you look at what the NHL is doing, they've announced all of these precautions. But there's a lot of prices that come with that too. Like they're only allowed to leave their bubble for the birth of a child or the death of a relative. Yeah. And then so they're locked in for a whole season, and the family is only allowed to come. Yeah, and your family's only allowed to come for like the finals. And the thing with esports, I don't even necessarily think it's about the money, because your players aren't even necessarily from the same country. And if we look at what's happening with, there's a lot of talk about visas and school being entirely online. And a lot of students are going to lose their temporary visa status because they can't take in-person classes, or they're going to have to transfer to another school that does offer in-person classes and then potentially put themselves in danger. And when you look at esports, we're global. You know, there might be a lot of teams that have all US residents, but if you've got someone from Canada, that could be a problem. And if you, for Overwatch, if you have Asian teams, how do you get everybody in one country? There are travel bans. There are significant restrictions. So if you make a LAN event and it's like, oh, by the way, you got to be a US resident, search for all these other teams. I mean, that destroys the scene right there, because you take away the international element of esports and you're losing some of the best players.
I haven't seen anything about that happening to traditional sports, but you mentioned the NHL, and they have a lot of international players that come from all around the world to compete. And I know part of their stipulation was that they need to have a roster locked down by July 13th or something like that. And they have to be locked in and ready to say yes or no by then, which is not a ton of time for people to make decisions when it comes down to it. But how are those players, if they are not going to be playing, does that affect their visas in the long run? Is that going to be something that will prevent them from staying? So do these leagues have to offer this in order to keep their players around in the US in order so they can,
Yeah.
right? So like if they're treating them the same way as students, I know it's a little bit different, the professional athletes, but in esports, we fought to be considered professional athletes.
And we're still not,
those,
we're still not there in a lot of, like, at least athletes have a recognized visa category.
Yes.
And esports doesn't get that.
We're working towards that kind of a status so we can keep that, but we may be subject to those as well, but we're also immune, like you say, as esports to that kind of a problem when it comes down to it, because you can run tournaments off of online platforms. It's just not great. It's far better to have in a LAN event. And I think we will start to see some of the bigger organizers figure out how to model and replicate these NHL, and the NBA is also reporting down to Disney World this week to compete in their matches down at the Wide World of Sports. So we'll see more and more examples of traditional sports to build off of. And if there is a financial ability to handle that kind of a burden, you're putting people up in hotels for months. I don't think there's many people out there that can afford to handle putting 96 players to run. To run a Masters event like we do. That's 96 players.
And then you need entire production teams. You need talent managers. You need all of the talent. You need all of your like broadcast engineers and everything. It's people don't realize the obscene number of people that these require, and that there still is a risk. They can have all the precautions in place that they want, but there's still significant risks there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the physicality of it all. At the end of the day, that's the big nice thing that esports has, right? We have the ability. This is so bonkers to think about, but we have the ability to trade players, and the fact that traditional sports right now literally cannot do that is just wild when you think about it, right? Because they're locked in. There's no hot swaps or anything like that, because as soon as you make that trade happen, all of a sudden these people are now outside of these social bubbles that they've constructed in order to be safe, and that compromises so much of it.
Yeah,
I mean,
the bubble system that they have is pretty intense, and to try and replicate that kind of thing, even to the point where the NHL is providing grocery delivery and package delivery service for the families of these NHL pros, so they don't have to worry about their families being taken care of while they're locked away in a quarantine. It's very similar to what astronauts go through before they leave the planet.
Oh yeah, that's
they go into full quarantine so they don't get sick or pass anything along to the crews up at the International Space Station. They have to monitor them and keep them in quarantine. The closest they get to their kids is like a line in between it, social distancing before it was a thing. So what is that going to ultimately bring effect to the families of these players and the production staff? You're removing a core piece of a family member for months.
Oh, really? Well, there's the Call of Duty announcement had a lot of really upset fans. If you look at that tweet, they're just like, oh, 4 million going to whoever has the best ping. This is stupid. You should have just canceled it. Everyone is really, really angry. And they're all saying, geez, the players could just go and they could just isolate for 6 months. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, listen, do you realize how much players and athletes and on-camera talent already give up? You already give up so much because of your travel schedule, because of the public attention and the threat to your personal safety and the loss of privacy. You're already dealing with all of those things. And now people are demanding that these players also give up their families for who knows how long, put themselves in increased physical risk when we're esports and we can play online. What? Like, why? It's so frustrating.
No, I get it.
It is absolutely silly.
The other thing is, like, it's not like we want to do this, right? Like, if the option was there where we could, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, right? But I'm gonna assume that us as tournament organizers, if we had the option to have a tournament that we organize in person that other people could go to as well, we would pick that almost every time. But it's
exactly
not.
We just don't have the ability to all the time.
Yeah.
And
I mean, this is a creative solution to get around the problem that is the COVID crisis right now. I think what they're doing with it is actually pretty genius, because one of the problems with playing from home a lot is like, okay, somebody could use modified controller. They could have, as we've seen in a few other esports recently, they could have ringers or ghost players or whatever you want to call it, somebody else playing in their place. But they're sending out a specific kit of camera and stuff that has to be set up and verified, remotely beforehand. They're going to have to inspect the controller. The match cannot start until the player is in the chair, that kind of thing. So, I think it's an incredibly creative solution to not only give us the entertainment that we want, right? What all these fans want, but also make sure that the integrity of the tournament is being maintained, which is one of the biggest problems with online tournaments, is that, it's much easier to cheat when you're remote. So, they're putting these players on camera and making sure that that's there. And as a bonus, by having all the players on camera, that's actually controlled by the production. We now have really cool shots of the players. We can integrate that into player storyline stuff. So frankly, I don't see what people are mad about, and they need to get over it. And if they think that these players are going to have bad connections with bad pings or anything like that, what world are you living in, frankly?
Yeah, the teams and the organizations have made sure to support the players pretty heavily, it seems like. Just watching some of the different streams, you've seen the production value go up significantly because they've sent gear to their houses. I mean, look at what we've got right here in front of us. And you probably noticed our podcast is upgraded a little bit along the way. But
it's asinine. Like they think that they paid $30 million for this spot, so that means they don't have like a nickel for internet. Like, come on, y'all.
I mean, I've worked with a couple.
The mental gymnastics is mind-boggling.
Yeah, and then also just the other thing is, I saw a lot of comments that were along the lines of, geez, it'd be better if you just didn't do anything. Franchise owners paid $30 million for a spot. Players need to draw salaries. Sponsors of major team owner, like sponsors of major teams and their brands, are paying for the exposure they get through these players playing. If you just go, oh, online's not good enough, you are completely collapsing the ecosystem for that game. You're taking away someone's full-time job. You're taking away their chance to support themselves in a time when the economy and jobs and everything are so limited. So yeah, it sucks for you that your favorite team might not win because they have one player with a ping disadvantage. But hey, guess what? They're happier to be playing than sitting there finding themselves rosterless and having to pick up a new game that is willing to be played online.
Preach.
And it's just like, if you love these players and you want to see them, why would you actively search to ruin their livelihood? That's mental gymnastics. We should have an Olympics for that.
Well, and at the same time, we've seen so many traditional sports leagues adopt esports at the same time. It's a solution that they're going to, and we're being told not to do events in this way because it's going to be worse. I agree, it's going to be worse than it could have been, but it's a better solution than nothing right now.
Yeah.
Sure, nothing will beat an actual LAN tournament, but who cares? At least you're getting the entertainment that you are clamoring for free, by the way.
Yeah.
When you watched on Twitch, you don't got to pay anything. Like,
just because I can't go to an EDM festival doesn't mean I stop listening to my favorite EDM artists. Like, I'm still going to listen to their music that they produce for me to consume at home. So let's just be happy that things are being produced for home right now.
Yeah. And I understand the concerns too, right? It's like, is there ever an asterisk next to any of these championships because they were played online or anything like that?
I think
2020 has an asterisk attached to it permanently.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the whole thing.
Blanket.
This is just like the equivalent, this whole year is like the equivalent of season 4 of Community, right? It's just a big gas leak. We're all going to forget about it. It's not an actual year, right? It's just an asterisk. And again,
I was going to go with Crystal Skull.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's Crystal Skull. Yeah.
What other
Matrix 2 and 3.
What's up?
Matrix 2 and 3.
It's a Matrix 3 for sure, but 2 at least had that incredible sequence with the 100 Agent Smiths.
Yes.
It's pretty sick.
Yeah. So, but I think those are my two go-to for what people don't like to acknowledge exist. The episode 2 of Star Wars, maybe.
And we're not touching Star Wars, JB. You know, you're going to get into it.
We're going to get into it real bad.
We were talking about esports and the concessions that they've been making recently to make it so their leagues can still exist. And right now, we don't get to host our shows. And we've talked about how that makes us really sad because we miss every single one of the people that comes out to our shows and participates in what we do. And we wish that we could see you guys, and probably should have 3 or 4 times already. But in the meantime, there have been some things that we've been talking about try and improve the show here. So what from each of you, what is one thing that we can talk about real quick that we want to see change for our shows post-COVID when we do come back?
I guess so. For me, we've learned, so much. We're really concerned this is going to be a concern for a long haul. It's impossible to talk about vaccines or herd immunity or any of that because it's all guesses. So one of the things I really want to see is, I think that education and awareness are some of the most important things that exist in the world right now. Because in order for someone to care, you really have to give them a reason to care. And so that's where compassion and empathy and those things really matter. So I think one of the things that we've done a really good job with at our shows in the past is having really present messaging about so many different issues. We have great, like, consistent messaging throughout the shows through banners and different TVs that have rolling info on them. And I would really like to see that be used to kind of spread positive, hygiene and safety messaging, and really using that as an education tool, maybe partnering up with some kind of analytics or stats outreach program that can provide statistics, that can maybe do some of the research and pull in those personal stories. Maybe that's something that we have a panel on, where there is an actual ER nurse that talks about having to quarantine from their family for 6 months and all of the things that they learned. And, we are video games, but DreamHack is so much more, because there's so much lifestyle built into what we do and the lifestyle of being a gamer. So I know that when we get back to events, that's what I'm really going to focus on, is the education aspect of kind of what we've learned from this, and how for the rest of humanity's future, we can take what we've learned and not have to go through this again.
I mean, even reducing regular cases of con crud would be great at this
Exactly.
point.
That's what I was
in
saying.
Yeah.
the long term.
Jesus, just
Because we always get sick after an event.
When events come back, now more than ever, we need you smelly ass gamers to take a shower every once in a while. Wash your hands, wash everything, okay? We need it. We need it so bad.
All right, Blaine, what's your one for when we come back?
Well, since I am the person who's in charge of Expo services and cares very much about what happens in our Expo, since I'm the guy for that for the US, I'm particularly excited to look at how we can have wider aisles in the Expo area, so that people are able to socially distance while they line up, doing things like marking the floors with 6-foot markers, so that if there's a queue, people can queue appropriately, and just the measures that we can take in that area, because the Expo in particular, I think, is a pretty high contact space, with everybody crowding around, especially for raffles and things like that. So, personally, I would like to see mandatory masks as well, especially for those types of gatherings. But, the wider aisles in particular, I think, is going to be very powerful.
And I can say personally, from working on the operations side, that one of the main things that we pushed through originally with our floor plans was a wider core backbone aisle to our show, just so it's easier to get up and down the great wall of esports that we have and around our expo and to all the other cool stuff at a DreamHack. It's usually about 20 to 25 feet wide, depending on the show, which is a big highway. And it's become more and more crowded over the years as DreamHack has grown.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's
that
clogged real
highway,
fast.
yeah, that mentality that we have there, that bigger aisle, bringing that into the expo, maybe not 25 feet, but at least making sure that you can socially distance with that middle line there. Dave's going to have his work cut out for him designing these new show flows for us, because flow is a major part of why we built that aisle that way. And this only helps the flow in the long run, but also reduces the amount of content that we can have at the end of the day if we do have to make these wider aisles. So the concessions are going to be great, but at the end of the day, the safety is worth it for everybody.
It's like with online games. You have to give up some things. It can't be like the way it was, but we're going to do our best to make it work in the safest, most responsible way so that you can still have something.
And at the end of the day, we just want everybody to be safe.
Yeah.
At our show and not at our show, just in our community, outside of our community. We want everybody to be safe wherever they are. And when you come to a DreamHack, that's kind of our promise to you guys, is that we want to create a space that is as safe as possible for everyone to come and enjoy themselves in and not have to worry about anything happening. And that's been our mission in the background this entire time. It has never left any of our decision making, all the way through to sometimes making it even harder for us to run the shows. So we
absolutely.
have that best interest in mind all the way through. And all of these things that have popped up during no events are very serious changes to what we do every single day, whether they're noticed or not at a show. There are changes happening in the background that we hope will continue to allow people to feel as safe as possible. But thank you all for your opinions on kind of a deeper topic that we dove into here at the end of the show, and bearing with us through a little bit of a longer podcast this time. But I'd like to thank everyone again for joining us on this episode of the DreamHack Download, Everything Gaming Under One podcast. You can make sure to find us on all of the wonderful podcast platforms, Stitcher, Podbean, Google even. We just got added there.
Ooh, shiny.
iTunes, Spotify, all of those wonderful places you can find the DreamHack Download, or on our YouTube channel as well if you'd like to watch along with the crazy faces that we make when we watch each other's discussion topics come to light. But until next time, thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.